Hey, what's up, everybody? I want to welcome you guys to the Dreamerspro Podcast. I'm your host, Charles, one half of the Dreamerspro family. If this is your first time, listen to this podcast, probably seen us on YouTube, be sure to check out the Dreamerspro Podcast. We're on Spotify and iTunes. If this is your first time on the YouTube channel, if this is your first time hearing us on the podcast, make sure you check out our YouTube channel. It's called Dreamerspro, where we have a lot of interesting topics and different type of shows on basketball and probably sports as a whole. Now, this podcast is basically a weekly recap of what's happening in the league, but also I like to get into some interesting topics that I'm not really hearing people talk about in the media, and so I think you guys are most likely going to enjoy what I'm going to get into in this video today. So I have a lot that I want to get into. Some of it is quite relevant, current, others are a little bit off center. So let's get into it. So y'all are fully aware of the hiatus that the NBA has been under because of this COVID-19, okay? And let me just firstly say that this pandemic is a really, really, really serious thing worldwide, okay? To put all of that in context, I'm currently shooting this video from Lagos, Nigeria, okay? And in Lagos, we only have, from what I've heard, about 8 to 11 cases. So it's just recently the government decided that they're going to close the international airport and stop all flights from going out or coming into the country just so they can sort of contain the current outbreak and make sure it doesn't get worse. But they still allowed local flights to sort of have a role. Now, if we juxtapose the situation, what's happening in Italy, where Marco's from, and for those of you guys who don't know and keep asking me, who's Marco? Okay, Marco is the co-founder of Dreamerspro. All right, that's the first thing. The second thing, all of the videos that you guys watch, every single video you watch, all the graphics, all the images, all of those stuff, Marco is responsible for that. All the editing, all the stuff that seems to be cool, even some of the short clips that you see with the music and the clips and all that, Marco puts all of that together. So without Marco, there is no channel. All I do is come up with topics, shoot topics, and we collaborate on different ideas. But Marco is, this is, we both play just as an important role to the Dreamerspro community and getting you guys all this content. So that's what Marco is. He doesn't do videos because we just decided that it would be faster for us to get out content this way, for us to just split the workload like that. But that's who Marco is. Now, back to the topic. Marco, who is Italian, I don't know if you guys know, but the situation in Italy is dire. And I think it's probably the worst right now globally. And it's really affected a lot of people's lives there, and their healthcare system has been put under tremendous strain because so many people have contracted this mysterious illness. So Marco's in that situation, and he's fine. He's healthy. Him and his family are fine, but there are a lot of people that, are not okay. And now in the States, where I'm from, where I was born and raised, in the States, in New York, where I grew up, New York seems to have the most cases. And you all know that Kevin Durant, who plays with the Brooklyn Nets, is one of 4 Brooklyn Net players that recently contracted this illness. Now, I haven't heard much from the Brooklyn Nets since he was diagnosed positive for the COVID-19. But I'm sure he's going to be okay. I'm sure a lot of the other NBA players are going to be fine. And which brings me back to the topic at hand, which is the NBA, because we all know that we're all sort of waiting for when the season is going to resume again. That's what we're all searching for. We're all waiting to see when will the NBA season begin again. Now, Adam Silver was recently interviewed on ESPN by Rachel Nichols, and she posed some poignant questions to him, asking him, saying, listen, when are games going to come back? When are we going to start seeing games being played again? And he basically just said, listen, we're looking at all options. We're trying to figure out what is the best possible solution we can put forward to be able to make sure that these games can resume in a timely fashion. And I think best case scenario so far is probably going to be games played in closed arenas with no fans in attendance. that's probably what's going to end up happening, just because I think for health reasons, and I'm not even sure if a lot of the fans are most likely going to want to go and be in large groups of people because of the new social distancing that everyone has been asked to comply with and practice. So I think that's probably going to be a plausible resolution for the NBA, and that's probably what's going to happen. Now, with that whole discussion, is brought forward other sort of questions, okay, so if and when the NBA season does resume, what will it look like? All right, what is that going to look like as far as, I mean, will the season resume and teams are just going directly to the playoffs? Are teams going to play 15 games? Are they going to play 20 games? Are they going to pick up right where they left off during the regular season? Now, if I look at the current standings in the NBA, all right, let's look at the Eastern Conference with the Milwaukee Bucks. They've played about I want to say 62 games or so. Now, with that being said, there's still probably about 20 games left in the regular season, and the Milwaukee Bucks still have the current standings at number one overall in the entire league. The question is, do they come back and play those remaining 19 or 20 games or whatever it is, or do they just jump to the playoffs? Now, Matt Barnes, who makes regular appearances on ESPN, I think was on Get Up, the show Get Up, and he said, listen, when the NBA season resumes, guys just can't be thrown back into basketball. They just can't go out there and start playing again. And Rachel Nichols, she's like, why? And he's like, first of all, NBA players need to get back into game shape. They need to get back into playing shape. You may look at someone maybe like LeBron James and see he pretty much looks the same, but that doesn't mean he's in basketball shape. And you have to give players at least 10 games to be able to get their legs under them, to be able to get their rhythm again, to be able to get the feel of the game. You just can't just say, okay, the season starts in a week and the playoffs start in a week. No, teams have to get back into their flow again. And Matt Barnes is recommending that there are at least 10 games played before the playoff begins. Now, it's also important to point out that Matt Barnes has been quite insightful with a lot of the things that he's been saying. He also noted that given the fact that these players are going to have probably 60 to 90 days off, because we're thinking about the NBA resuming sometime in June, I believe. So now this is March 22nd, depending on when you're watching or listening to this podcast. And on March 22nd, you're looking at April 22nd, that's 1 month. May 22nd, that's another month. So we're looking about another 90 days from watching NBA games. And he said with that additional 3 months off, or whatever it is now, probably 4 months off if we're counting all the time that's been missed thus far, he's saying you're going to get some of the best basketball that you've seen in quite some time. Talking about playoff basketball, because he believes that all of the players are going to be 100% rested. Therefore, they're going to have more energy in the playoffs, and they're going to be able to do really, 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 really well. So that's Matt Barnes' that's a secondary recommendation that he has. He's like, listen, give these guys some time, let them play some games, because when they come back, they're going to have a lot of energy to put forward, and we're going to really, really enjoy the playoffs. Although, given that these playoffs are going to be probably the most unique playoffs we've ever seen as basketball fans, and probably sports fans as a whole, because I'm sure other people that watch other sports are going to be interested to see what these games are going to look like. So that seems to be the general theme of the NBA. Another thing is, there's been some whispers around the league and probably in social media that a lot of players are now beginning to get worried about their conditioning. a lot of players are like, okay, we're not playing, right? I'm not even sure if players are allowed to pretty much be around other players. I don't know if teams can meet up with each other and go out and play together. For example, if we look at the Los Angeles Clippers and the Los Angeles Lakers, for people watching this or listening to this in Los Angeles, I understand that you guys have a stay-at-home order. I think that was issued by your governor. I don't know the name of the governor of California. And I think 40 million Californians were ordered to stay at home. So if Californians are ordered to stay at home and these teams are based in California, that pretty much means that these players are not going to be able to go out and just hang out with each other, I don't think. Now, obviously, there must be exceptions to this rule, exceptional reasons that would allow players to be able to go outside and do things. Not even just players, with people, maybe to go to the supermarket. For instance, there's a particular provision in the United Kingdom and London that allows some people, they call them special workers, to allow them to go to work with their kids. I'm not necessarily sure what these special workers are, who they are, what professions they're referring to. So they have that type of thing happening in the UK. But getting back to California, I don't know what that is going to look like because I'm not there on the ground. And actually, this is something that I would really like a lot of the followers of the channel from California to just give us some feedback as to what the situation looks like on the ground there, because it's one thing when you hear it on the news, it's another thing when you're hearing it from people that actually live in these places that can give you a first-hand account of what it's like to be in California. So if you guys have some experiences that you'd like to share, just make sure you share that with us in the comment section, because I'd really like to hear what you guys hear about what you guys are going through, just to give us more information as a community. So a lot of these players seem to be worried about their conditioning, which brings me to another thing, which is potential injuries when the NBA season does resume. And that's the reason why these 10 games that Matt Barnes is proposing is such a good idea, because you have to remember, if these guys have not been participating in, NBA simulated games, when they come back, because of this elongated rest period that they're currently under, this could potentially lead to some injuries. And that's why it's good for players to get their bodies lathered up and getting back into game shape, instead of just going into playoff mode and then coming out and trying to do something you thought you could do, but your body's not ready for it. I'll give you a perfect example of what I mean by this. Now, it's not the same, but I'm just giving you guys an instance. As I am right now, I've been trying to lose a lot of weight, because I put on a lot of weight since moving to Nigeria. But I used to live in Italy. And in Italy, I was very fit, fantastic shape, ran probably 4 to 5 times a week, sprinted, worked out. So I was in great shape, eating great food. And that's one of the things that me and Marco kind of vibed on, was also being healthy. So we used to run, work out together, and all that cool stuff. Since moving to Nigeria, I put on a lot of weight since coming here. So about 2 weeks ago, I decided to start running outside again, because I enjoy running outside quite a bit. And that's my number one sort of release. Now, what happened the first week I went out there to run? First day, I felt like somebody threw a bag of bricks on my back and said, okay, run. My body felt so heavy. It wasn't even funny. And on last week Sunday, I went outside to try to run, and I realized that, oh wow, I have some pain in my knee. And what I realized was that I had too much weight on my knee. And now I ran on Monday, and I haven't been able to run since. And my right knee has been in a lot of pain, and that has to do with the fact that I have not done this particular activity for a very, very long time. My body's not used to it again. In my case, I didn't run, the way I used to run really hard. I hadn't done that in a year and a half. Now these guys are probably looking at 4 months, but the intensity that they play with is much higher, I'm sure. So you need time to work yourself back into shape. And in my case, it's not just about the weight, it's also about my endurance. So as I said, you may look at LeBron and say, well, LeBron looks the same, or Kawhi looks the same, or, Dwight Howard looks the same. But that doesn't mean that they're in the same shape, that they have the same endurance. And that's why these games are really important. And if they miss out on that, it could lead to some potential injuries, kind of like what I'm suffering now with. Which moves me on to another topic. And given that a lot of our followers in the Dreamerspro community are Clippers fans, I got to talk about Paul George. Now, let's get into Paul George for a second, because the theme has been this. A good amount of people that comment on our videos, that watch our videos, seem to have some level of distrust in the abilities of Paul George to be able to perform at high leverage moments. A lot of them seem to feel like Paul George is not that dude. A lot of you guys seem to feel this way about PG. And some people have gone as far as they say they wish they never traded for Paul George. Now, Paul George this season is averaging 21 points, 5.7 rebounds, 3.9 assists. He's doing all of this in 29 minutes a game, shooting 43% from the field, 40% from the three-point line. He's attempting 7.9 three-pointers and making 3.2, so he's legitimately shooting a good 40% from the three-point line. He's shooting 88% from the free throw line, and he's getting you 1.3 steals a game, but he's only played 42 games this season. Now, I'm going to address this particular group of people, but I'm also going to just concur with you guys to a certain level. Paul George has played 42 games this season. Number one, he started off the season missing games because he came off of some shoulder surgery that he had to go through after playing in Oklahoma City last season. So that's why he missed training camp and missed some games in the beginning of the season. So he can probably tack off 10 or 15 games for that. Then during the season, he suffered a pull hamstring, which caused him to miss some more games. And it wasn't until recently that he came back and started playing again. And the last time we saw him put up a PG type game was against the Lakers, when I think he scored 31 points that game against the Lakers. So a lot of people have been like, listen, I don't know if Paul George is going to live up to the hype. And given that the NBA now is going to have a 90-day hiatus, or probably a 120-day hiatus if we're talking about 4 months, if we're counting the time that's been lost and the time that they're going to lose in trying to get these games sorted out and seeing when the season is going to start up again, Paul George is going to have a legitimate 3+ months of rest. I'm not focusing on the entire league. I'm not focusing on the Lakers. I'm not focusing on the Bucks. I'm not focusing on the 76ers. I'm just talking about Paul George in this segment. Paul George is going to have at least 3 to 4 months of rest to heal up his body, and I'm sure he's going to be doing a lot of treatment and making sure that his body is going to be good to go by the time the season kicks off again. And now that he's going to have all of this break, the notice is quite simple. Paul George needs to step up when these playoffs roll around. Right? He needs to play like the MVP candidate that he played like last season. Last season, PG was playing 37 minutes a game. He was scoring 28 points a game. He shot 39% from the three-point line, attempting 9.8 and making 3.8. So he shot a legitimate 39%. 84% from the free throw line. Got you 8.2 rebounds and 2.2 steals, amongst one of the leading leaders in steals, and probably was also one of the leading candidates for Defensive Player of the Year last year, and also Most Valuable Player of the Year last year. Paul George, the excuse cannot be that I'm not healthy or I didn't have enough rest, I didn't have enough rehabilitation time. Everyone is going to have enough rest for the pause of games because of this global pandemic. So when the games resume again, Paul George needs to step up. He needs to step up. And I'm going to understand a lot of the Clippers fans that say, hey, listen, you have no excuse now. Health cannot be an issue when you've had 4 months to rest. 4 months to get your mind right and to get prepared. Now, obviously, the entire country, the entire world is under mental duress because of this global pandemic, but yet and still, you should be able to get yourself mentally prepared for the season by the time it resumes. So, there are no excuses for the Clippers after this 60 or 90 days off. No excuses. There should be no excuses for the Clippers. Everyone should be firing on all cylinders by the time the season resumes, assuming that the NBA is going to give teams at least 10 games to get back into, game shape and start playing, playing with basketball type speed games. Assuming they get those 10 games to get their feet under them, to get their conditioning right, to get back into the flow of things, then the Clippers have no excuse at this point. Injuries cannot be it. Everyone had the same amount of time off, and 4 months is a lot of time to get your body right and get enough rest or get back into shape. And last time I checked, they had their full complement of players on their roster available for them over the last 11 games, I believe so. Or 8 games, I'm not sure. Yes. And they went 7-1 in that stretch. The only loss they had was to the Lakers, but they had 6 wins going into that game against LA. Then they came out and bounced back from that loss, beating another team of whom I don't remember right now, which is not important. So there are no excuses for the Clippers this season. Everyone should be ready to go. Doc Rivers should have his entire staff, ready to go. Kawhi Leonard needs to get everyone on the same page. He's the leader of the team, whether he believes it or not, or whether he knows it or not, whether he talks a lot or he doesn't talk a lot. You're still the leader of the team because you're the best player on the team. And it's your responsibility to set the tone, get everybody in, get everyone on the same page, on the court and off the court. The 2 leaders of that team are Doc Rivers and Kawhi Leonard, and it's their job to make sure the Clippers are ready and prepared to go. So when the NBA season resumes, they take off with the right mindset, understanding that the original goal was to win the NBA championship, and they have all of their players ready, and there should be no excuses. And when the season starts, again, it's go mode. They have to grab this thing by the horn and really attack the remaining of the season and go into the playoffs with the right mindset. So the Clippers have no excuses going into this playoffs because now everyone is rested. Now, and you can say the same for all the other playoff teams that are looking to get into the playoffs, but for this particular instance, I'm focusing on the Clippers, and the Clippers should have no excuses going into these playoffs. They need to be ready. I cannot continue to keep defending you guys against the community. So you guys need to be ready. The Clippers need to be ready, and I believe that they will be, because it's going to be a big letdown if they're not. If you see them come out of the blocks sluggish and sloppy, and probably giving away 3-4 games out of the probable 10 that they're going to have, it's not going to look good. You don't want to go into the playoffs playing sloppy basketball. You want to peak at the right moment. And to be fair to them, it looks like that's what they were doing right before this global outbreak of this illness just took over everything and essentially shut down the entire planet, it seems like. So those are my thoughts and comments on the Los Angeles Clippers. Now moving on. We're gonna end this segment talking about LeBron James. And I want to talk about LeBron's legacy. This is a legacy season for LeBron. Now, let me just say this. If LeBron does not win a championship this season, and if in fact he never wins another championship for the rest of his basketball career, LeBron would have cemented himself as one of the top 10 basketball players of all time. There's nothing that's going to transpire between now and the time that LeBron James retires from basketball that is going to tarnish his legacy. There's nothing that's going to happen between now and then. Nothing. The only thing LeBron can do is add to his legacy at this point. And I think that's what he's playing for. For instance, watching him average 10.7 assists a game, leading the league in assists in year 17, can only add to his legacy. If he didn't do that, nobody would take anything away from his legacy because LeBron he's had a tremendous career. 4-time regular season MVP, 3 times finals MVP, 3 times NBA championship champion, led the league in scoring, I believe it was in 2008. He's going to lead the league in assists this season. I think he's 16-time All-Star. I'm not sure what it is. 4-time All-Star Game MVP. 3-time All-Star Game MVP. Top 3 in scoring in the history of the NBA. Has one of the greatest averages. Probably going to average 26, 7 and 7 for his career all time. So there's nothing left for LeBron James to accomplish. At this point, he's just adding to his legacy. Now, what happens to his legacy if LeBron wins a championship at age 35, bringing him 4 titles? A few things. Number one, he'll be the only player in the history of basketball to win 3 different championships with 3 different organizations. 1 with the Miami Heat. 2. He won the first ring ever for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and some people say that is his most tremendous accomplishment for his entire career. And now, if he potentially won another ring with the Los Angeles Lakers. If he pulled that off, he would have been the only basketball player to ever do that. Ever. No other basketball player would have been able to say that they've been able to do that. Now, Kawhi also has that same, he has the potential to do the same thing, but this is not about Kawhi. This is about LeBron. So LeBron James, I think it's a legacy season, but legacy in the sense that he's just adding to his legacy. He can't go to the finals and lose because, if he goes to the finals and loses, I don't think many people are going to hold that against him. Probably some will, but I think his legacy is already set in stone. I think a lot of people are going to feel the same way they pretty much felt at bottom. If he won another championship, Shannon Sharp and his foolishness is going to come out and say, well, now he's the greatest player of all time. I don't know how the hell he's going to get to that conclusion, but whatever. Shannon Sharp will come out and say that because Shannon Sharp loves sensationalism. It's absurd. LeBron can have a good game and he'll come out wearing a goat mask. So Shannon Sharp doesn't really count because he's what you call a hyper fan. Me, as a Kobe Bryant fan, I can openly admit to you that I think Michael Jordan is better than Kobe Bryant. And I'm a huge Kobe Bryant, my favorite player of all time, basketball player of all time. But I'm not delusional. I don't like Kobe to the point where I just start saying crazy things. Like, But I think that if he does win this, it's going to really add to his legacy. But if he doesn't win an NBA championship, no one is going to hold it against him. I mean, for God's sake, this guy's going to average 10 plus assists in year 17 and lead the league in assists. So, I mean, what are we going to hold against him at this point? Nothing really. Nothing. And finally, I want to get into the last point, which is the one thing LeBron James did better than Michael Jordan. The one thing. What is that one thing that LeBron did better than Michael Jordan? LeBron had a greater social presence than Michael Jordan. LeBron had a voice in the global community. We all knew where he stood on pressing issues that moved the world, that affected everyday people in their lives. LeBron was never afraid to step up to the plate and give his point of view, whether you agreed with him or disagreed with him. LeBron would come out and say, if he doesn't agree with the president, he will come out and say, I don't agree with you, and this is the reason why I don't agree with you. He was not politically correct. Sometimes he may have not said the right thing, but guess what? At least you knew where he stood. And there's something to be said about that. There's something to be said about a person who believes in something so strongly that not only is he willing to be wrong, but he's willing to say it and put it out there in the public and accept whatever type of scrutiny may come with him giving his opinion on that particular issue. Where some people are cowering and saying, don't say that. You don't want to say that. You may lose some fans. You may lose some sponsors. LeBron always seems to be able to get ahead of the play, so to speak, and just go out there and tell you what he thinks. So on a global level, if we're talking about an ambassador for basketball and for sports in general, LeBron has Michael Jordan beat, and it's not even close, from his stances on, police brutality, the NCAA, how they treat their students, shootings, whatever it is, him building a school. LeBron is much more socially active, which makes you think that LeBron is living in the world. He's not in a bubble. Yes, obviously he's in a bubble. I mean, he's LeBron James. He's one of the richest people in the world, has his own private jet, I'm sure, lives a life that many can only imagine. But that doesn't mean that he's so far up in the clouds, so deep inside his bubble, that he can't step outside of himself and comment and give light to things and give a voice to issues that regular people don't have the platform to create that same impact, and yet he still puts himself out there to be scrutinized, and he gives his point of view on things. Whether you agree with him or not is not the point. The point is that he's willing to do so, and that is tremendously commendable. And we can't say the same thing about Michael Jordan, because remember, Michael Jordan said even Republicans wear sneakers or wear basketball shoes or something like that. So that's where LeBron has the field completely beat. So when LeBron does decide to retire, he's going to go down as a global icon. Not just for what he accomplished on the court, but also because of his political stances that he took. That is the one thing that LeBron James undoubtedly did better than Michael Jordan. LeBron James was much more socially active. And LeBron James is not my favorite player of all time, but I have to tip my hat to him, because now we're not talking about basketball. We're talking about character. And that is, for me, extremely commendable, and I applaud him for that. I applaud him for that. And to see his level of magnanimity on so many other issues is tremendous. It's not to say that Michael Jordan is not magnanimous. I'm not saying that. I'm sure he is. But LeBron is willing to put himself out there, not just his checkbook. He's willing to put himself, put himself up for scrutiny. And that's commendable. And that's the one thing that LeBron James did better than Michael Jordan. And I commend him for that. So, once again, if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're on YouTube and you don't know about the the podcast, it's called the Dreamerspro Podcast. We're on Spotify and iTunes. You can definitely check us out. We'll have the link in the bottom of this video. Again, if you're listening to this on the podcast, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's called Dreamerspro, where you can get a lot of interesting and hot topics on there. Once again, I want to wish you guys a fantastic day. Make sure you guys stay healthy and stay hygienic and just stay safe. Again, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell to be notified when all of our newest and hottest content comes out. Once again, this is Charles here, your host, the one half of the Dreamerspro family, wishing you guys an amazing day. Peace.